Miscommunication is the Key. Written by ALLLsudMhb. Read to you by Evie is Evil. This fic is rated for general audiences. For archive warnings, creator chose not to use archive warnings. Category is Gen. Fandom, Batman, all media types. Summary. When Talia tells Damian about his father and the ridiculously large family he's a part of, she conveniently forgets to mention one small detail. All of his siblings are adopted. And Damian never questions their biological connection, especially since all his siblings oddly share similar features with their father. So he believes this embarrassingly long. Author's notes. I've seen this idea somewhere on TikTok, and it seemed so funny to me that I decided to write a small story with this. There is nothing serious, no real violence or angst, just some funny scenes that I have in mind. Hope you enjoy! Hint 1. Damian stepped into the Batcave, intending to warm up before patrol, only to find Drake at the Bat computer. Tim was staring at the screen like it held the meaning of life, or maybe just his will to live. Damian watched him in silence for 2 full minutes. In that time, Tim blinked only 3 times, each blink dangerously close to becoming a full-on nap right then and there. The bags under his eyes had reached Guinness World Record territory. Damian was pretty sure they could qualify as carry-on luggage. He approached slowly, frowning.
"Drake, when was the last time you slept?"
he asked. No response. Damian scowled, stepping closer, and forcefully spun Tim's chair around. He waved a hand in front of his face.
"I said, when did you last sleep?"
Tim blinked slowly at him. "I got a good rest on Thursday. I'm fine." Damian narrowed his eyes.
"It's Monday evening."
Tim nodded, unbothered, and spun his chair back to the screen. "I'm close to cracking this case. I can feel it." Damian clicked his tongue in disbelief.
"You're closer to dying of exhaustion. I can feel it."
Without further ceremony, he grabbed Tim by the hood of his sweatshirt, yanked him out of the chair, and began dragging him toward the elevator. Tim flailed slightly, but it was half-hearted at best. "A couple days without sleep isn't going to kill me," he muttered as Damian shoved him into the elevator.
"You shouldn't take pride in inheriting chronic insomnia and an inability to recognize basic human limits. I am convinced there was better qualities in your bloodline,"
Damian snapped. Tim blinked up at him. "Do you even know my parents well enough to say what I inherited?" Damian gave him a look, like he was the world's dumbest organism.
"Lack of sleep has clearly turned your brains into biomass. Or maybe people are just more wrong than I thought when they called you a genius."
He paused, waiting for a comeback. Nothing. He sighed.
"Well, I haven't met your mother, so I can't tell what you got from her, but we live under the same roof as our father, and you don't need a PhD in behavioral psychology to notice the shared pattern of self-destruction between you and father."
The elevator's doors opened. Damian resumed dragging Tim down the hallway. They still need to go some time to reach Tim's room, so Damian can throw his brother into his bed and go back to the cave. Tim, perhaps, accepting his fate, didn't resist anymore. As they passed one of the wall clocks, Damian scowled.
"Now I'll be the last one done with warm-ups before patrol. All because some idiot thought a 3-day sleepless streak was a brilliant idea."
He was still muttering complaints when Alfred appeared around the corner. "I understand your frustration, Master Damian," Alfred said calmly. "However, Master Timothy is unlikely to respond." Damian clicked his tongue again.
"Naturally. He has no counter-argument in the face of irrefutable facts."
"I'm afraid it's not the strength of your logic that silenced him," Alfred replied gently. "I believe it has more connection with the fact that he's already fallen asleep and cannot hear you." Damian blinked, looked down, and realized the lump in the hoodie he'd been dragging had gone completely limp. He tugged the hood down, and Tim slumped to the floor like a sack of laundry. There was no complaint, no protest. Tim didn't even twitch. Tim simply rolled onto his side, tucked his hand under his head, and continued snoring softly. How Damian didn't hear him snoring until Alfred said something. He stared. When had he even passed out?
Somewhere between the hallway and the elevator? Earlier? He wasn't sure. Alfred stepped closer, examining Tim with a practiced eye. Then he looked at Damian. If you don't mind, I'll take it from here and see him safely to bed. You can return to the cave for your warm-up. Damian didn't hesitate. Thank you, he said, already sprinting back toward the nearest descent into the Batcave. Maybe he wouldn't be the last to finish after all. Hint 2. The last of the robbers went down with a grunt and a clatter of metal against concrete. Damian's cape swayed as he stepped over the groaning man, crouched, and pulled a zip tie from his utility belt. With precise, practiced efficiency, he secured the man's wrist behind his back. Across the warehouse, Cassandra was already finishing with her group. She moved through the scattered criminals like a shadow, silent, efficient, untouchable. Now that the fighting was over, the air seemed heavier, filled with the metallic tang of sweat, adrenaline, and the distant echo of sirens drawing closer. Damian stood beside her, adjusting his gloves as they both surveyed the downed group. His cape fluttered slightly in the faint night breeze drifting in from the shattered windows above. Damian exhaled through his nose. I wish I could find something that worked for me, he said suddenly, voice low behind his mask. Something that fit as well as your style fits you. Cass didn't respond right away. She didn't need to. The turn of her head, the quiet attention in her body language, was answer enough. Damian crossed his arms, eyes narrowing behind the white lenses of his cowl. I've studied every technique Father ever used, every league method, every form, every kata, every discipline, and they work. Technically. But they don't feel like mine. He paused, then glanced at her. You move like your fighting is just a part of you, not something learned, like breathing. Cass tilted her head slightly, still silent, listening. Damian's voice dipped lower. Your body doesn't hesitate. Mine still does. He looked down at his gloved hands. Not often, but enough. He let the words settle between them, then added, more to himself than her. I sound pathetic. Cass finally moved, walking past him without a word, and without looking. She tapped 2 fingers on the center of his chest plate, a silent but deliberate gesture. She then crouched beside another criminal, checking their pulse and binding their wrists together. Damian watched her for a moment, brows furrowed. Your style, he said again, this time with a different tone. I'm glad your father's genes weren't stronger than your mother's. That got her attention. Cass straightened slightly and looked at him. Damian gestured vaguely at the warehouse around them. His style, it wouldn't suit you, and it's heavy. You'd drown in it, but you... He motioned to her. You fight with speed and control. That's better. Cass didn't speak, her mask hiding whatever she might have been thinking. But after a pause, she nodded once, small, honest. I know you don't hate your mother, Damian added, softer now. And I'm not saying you should, just... He trailed off again. I guess you're lucky that you took after the right one. Sirens wailed closer outside. Police were pulling up, boots hitting pavement, radios crackling. Cass looked towards the entrance. Damian glanced down at one of the criminals and scoffed. Sloppy form, he muttered, nudging the man's leg with his boot. They barely lasted. Cass signed back over her shoulder. Very sloppy. Damian almost smiled. They stood there for a moment, just the 2 of them in the still air of the aftermath, silent and steady, warriors carved from different pieces of the same shadow. Then Damian said, You know, sometimes I think I'd give up half my inheritance just to be as effortless as you in a fight. Cass didn't reply, but she bumped his shoulder lightly with hers, then turned away as the police poured into the warehouse behind them.
Hint 3. The Wayne Foundation Gala was in full swing. Soft jazz, clinking glasses, and the buzz of Gotham's elite pretending they weren't quietly judging each other. The gala sparkled with the kind of restrained extravagance only old money could pull off. Damian stood near one of the less crowded displays, a steel sculpture he was already bored of, nursing a glass of sparkling, non-alcoholic cider. His scowl was deep enough to pass for thoughtful brooding, but anyone who knew him could recognize that specific expression of insulted pride. Stephanie sidled up beside him in a lavender gown that shimmered under the chandeliers, her smile unmistakably mischievous. "Why do you look like that drink personally offended you?" she asked, nudging him lightly with her elbow. Damian lifted the glass slightly. "Because it has." "It's just sparkling cider. You're not exactly 21. "I'm perfectly aware of the laws," Damian said, the words clipped. "That doesn't mean I need to be subjected to this mockery of taste. Real alcohol wouldn't affect me anyway." "Sure," Steph grinned. "But the scandal would kill Bruce." Before Damian could shoot back something scathing, two well-dressed women approached, beaming the way people do when they're about to say something painfully polite and unintentionally awkward. "Oh, look at you two," one said cheerfully. "You look so sweet together." Stephanie's eyebrows lifted with amusement, but Damian didn't react. The second woman chuckled. "It's so nice to see siblings getting along, even when it's complicated. Damian, right? And she's dating your brother?" Stephanie blinked, clearly trying to decide whether to correct her or just roll with it. Damian, however, responded before she could. "Yes," he said flatly, eyes narrowing just a touch. "She's dating one of them. I have several." "Oh, that must be such a challenge for you," the first woman continued, oblivious. "We heard you grew up with just your mother. It must be hard. Suddenly being dropped into a whole family like this, with grown siblings no less. That's a lot to take in." Damian arched a brow, his grip tightening slightly on the delicate flute of sparkling cider. He looked at them as if they just said water was wet. "It creates certain complications." Steph caught it and turned toward him with a curious smile. "Still not over the whole suddenly having siblings thing?" Damian didn't answer immediately. He adjusted his posture slightly, eyes scanning the room like he was looking for a viable escape route. "No, I'm not over how father compensates for missing their childhoods by overcompensating during mine." Steph's smile grew, catching where this was going. "Oh, right, the photo thing." Damian scowled at his drink again. "It's not a photo thing. It's a surveillance-led obsession. He documents everything. I wouldn't be surprised if he's compiled several albums already." Stephanie let out a laugh, far too loud for the polite hush of the gala, and leaned in like she was sharing a secret. "Honestly, I think he's trying to break some kind of record. Like the complete childhood of Damian Wayne from Scowl to slightly smaller Scowl." The two women, who hadn't quite gotten far enough away, turned around again at the sound of laughter. "Wait, albums?" one of them asked, eyes wide. "With a camera, like the old-fashioned way?" "He thinks it's suitable," Damian said grimly. "It isn't. Half the time Alfred has to stop him from bringing a DSLR on breakfast." Stephanie was openly laughing now, holding her glass with both hands to keep it from spilling. "Oh my God, he really did try that once. You remember? We were sitting half asleep after movie night, and he pulled out that ridiculous zoom lens like he was some kind of proud suburban dad at a middle school soccer game." Damian gave a tired sigh and muttered, "He said the lighting was dramatic." The woman stared, blinking, trying to reconcile Gotham's most famous party person with the image of him scrapbooking candids of his youngest son. "That's," one finally managed, "actually kind of sweet." "It's deeply unsettling," Damian corrected, sipping his cider like it was a straight bourbon. Stephanie bumped his shoulder with hers. You say that? But you didn't delete those pictures when he emailed you the Dropbox link.
I didn't see the email, Damian muttered, then added, Alfred framed one of them.
The woman giggled, thoroughly charmed. You really are a family, one of them said. Damian swirled the contents of his glass. Still that pitiful excuse for a drink, and muttered,
None of this would be necessary if father had found his other children on time.
Stephanie bumped to his shoulder. Oh, come on. He didn't really have control over this. Damian didn't flinch.
Exactly. If he hadn't been such a Casanova, tripping over romantic regrets and failing to use basic investigative tools, perhaps I wouldn't have to suffer through this aggressively affectionate compensation arc.
One of the women gasped, half covering her mouth. Wait, are you thinking that your father is only doing all of this because he feels guilty?
Why else would a man photograph his teenage son during fencing drills and proudly caption it, Look at that form, in a family album?
Damian snapped, his tone deadpan. The other woman blinked. I mean, that sounds adorable. Damian turned slowly towards her, gaze flat and unimpressed.
Try living it.
Stephanie snorted into her drink again and leaned closer with a smirk. Come on, dames, admit it. A tiny part of you likes it. He gave her a withering look.
If I ever start liking it, shoot me.
Hint 4. Bruce stood by the doorway of the Batcave, arms crossed in that way he probably thought looked casual, but definitely wasn't. You know, he started, voice mild, it wouldn't kill you to hang out with kids your age. Go to a movie, grab ice cream, maybe even, God forbid, talk to a girl? Damian didn't even look up from where he was sharpening his throwing knives.
Is this a lecture on social development, or another of your attempts to live vicariously through your offspring?
Bruce sighed. You're 14. It's a perfectly normal age to experience young love. I'm just saying, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to have a little crush. Maybe even go on a date. Damian froze. Slowly, deliberately, he turned towards Bruce.
I am not going to follow your charming example, he said, voice like ice. Fall for every woman with a tragic backstory and a good right hook, and end up being a single father with 5 children. And this number still keeps growing.
Bruce blinked. That's not...
You're a slut, father, Damian declared, dead serious. And I say that with the deepest filial respect.
There was a beat of stunned silence. I just think... Bruce began again, valiantly ignoring the insult. I think it might be good for you to experience life outside of training and patrols.
Damian raised an eyebrow. Yes, because your romantic history clearly suggests that it has worked out wonderfully for you and your mental health.
Bruce pinched the bridge of his nose. Just think about it. That's all I'm saying.
I have, Damian said. And I've decided I'm quite content the way I am right now. And I do not have plans in changing that.
Bruce turned and walked away without another word. But Damian didn't miss the muttered. Alfred warned me it would end that way. Damian rolled his eyes and went back to sharpening his blades. Romance could wait. Right now, he had more important things to focus on, like not turning into his father. Hint 5. Damian stepped into Jason's apartment, carefully balancing a tote bag full of Alfred's neatly labeled Tupperware and a stack of books nearly as tall as his torso. Dick followed behind, holding a few more containers and a smug grin. Jason was lounging on the couch, socks mismatched, hair a mess.
About time, he called.
I was starting to think you were eating the lasagna on the way.
Alfred would gut me,
Damian replied flatly, setting the containers down on the kitchen counter before heading toward the shelf of Jason's books. He grabbed the stack and turned to the wall of shelves. Jason had helpfully cleared some space. On the top shelf. Damian stared at it, then at the books, then at the shelf again. He stretched. Up, higher, toes lifting off the ground. Still no luck. Behind him, Jason snorted. "Oh no," Dick said, his voice full of faux sympathy. "Is the shelf too high, little D?"
"I could go get you a step stool," Jason offered, grinning as he leaned against the wall.
Damian turned slowly, books still in his arms, and glared.
"Must be tough," Jason continued. "Being surrounded by genetic lottery winners and still stuck at travel size."
Damian rolled his eyes, clearly unimpressed. "I fail to see how height correlates with combat effectiveness. I've beaten both of you in sparring, and I remain unconvinced that being a walking utility pole offers any strategic advantage."
"That's the spirit,"
Dick said brightly, giving him a light pat on the head as he passed.
"Besides, you'll get your growth spurt eventually."
"Probably."
"Probably,"
Jason echoed with a wink.
"Maybe in 10 years.
Damian scowled, setting the books down with more force than necessary. "It's statistically unlikely that every other member of this cursed family ends up towering above me. My mother's not exactly short, and father is, well, a skyscraper."
"Yeah,"
Jason said, cracking open a soda.
"Maybe. Madam Fortune is on your side, and would you take that after B? But,
Dick started while taking containers out of the bag.
there is some profit to being small size. Like your little baby hands."
Damian glared harder. "I hope you both develop chronic joint pain from carrying around your gangly limbs."
Jason cackled. "Aw, don't be bitter. We still love you, vertically challenged or not."
Damian muttered something in Arabic that probably wasn't very kind and went back to stacking books. On the lower shelves. For now. Finally finding the truth. Damian crouched next to an open box, pulling out a few of Dick's old books and setting them on a nearby shelf. Across from him, Tim was digging through another box, more meticulous in sorting. They were helping Dick with moving to a new apartment since early morning.
"Where do you want this?"
Tim asked, holding up a small wooden picture frame. Inside was a slightly faded photo. Dick, maybe 8 or 9, sitting between a smiling woman and a man with dark hair and kind eyes. The woman was clearly Mary Grayson, but the man wasn't Bruce. Damian straightened and walked over, curiosity flickering in his expression. "Let me see." Tim held the frame out so Damian could take a better look. The younger boy leaned in, frowning slightly. "That's not father," Damian said, eyes narrowing. "Who is he? Your stepfather?" Dick blinked, then gave a short laugh.
"No, that's my dad, John Grayson."
Damian stared at the photo for another moment, his brow furrowed. "So," he started slowly, "you call him your father because he raised you?" Dick exchanged a glance with Tim, both looking a little puzzled.
"Well, yeah," Dick said. "He was my dad."
There was a beat of silence before Tim squinted slightly.
"Wait, Damian, you do know we're adopted, right?"
Damian's head tilted just a fraction. "Adopted?" Now it was Dick and Tim's turn to look completely thrown. Tim, clearly unable to let the moment pass, slowly pulled out his phone. "What are you doing?" Damian asked suspiciously, still reeling.
"Capturing history," Tim said, already recording. "The exact moment Damian Wayne discovered he's the only blood relative in this chaotic found family."
Damian's eyes narrowed. "Delete that."
Tim grinned. "Never. This is gold. I'm sending it to Steph. And Cass. Maybe Barbara."
Dick, meanwhile, was still trying to process everything.
"I thought you were aware. Wait, why else did you think you had so many siblings?"
"I thought," Damian said carefully, like walking through a minefield,
and that father had a lot of lovers, and that he simply didn't bother to check if any of them got pregnant.
Tim choked. What?
Damian shrugged, clearly not seeing what the issue was, including, though not limited to, my mother. Obviously, father didn't seem to be aware of my existence before mother brought me to meet him. I considered your situation might be similar.
Dick stared at him for a long second. You thought Bruce was our biological father? All of us?
You all look vaguely similar, Damian muttered, now sounding vaguely defensive. Dark hair, blue eyes, light skin, big height, strong jawlines. Damian pointed his finger at Dick and said accusingly, You were most guilty in this, being like twins with father's younger version.
Tim, still filming, cackled from behind the couch. He's right, though. You and Bruce do look like someone copied and pasted with slight personality adjustments.
Dick gestured at Tim.
And what about you, huh? You have the exact same tragic orphan look Bruce goes for. I was adopted before that was a trend, Tim shot back proudly. Trendsetter.
Damian scowled. It's not my fault your appearances made this believable. No one told me I was surrounded by strays.
Whoa, Tim gasped in fake offense. Strays?
Dick tried to suppress a laugh.
That's rich, coming from the actual son raised by assassins and wolves.
You mean warriors, Damian corrected, lifting his chin.
Sure, Tim said, panning the camera dramatically toward Damian. Let the record show, the heir to the Wayne fortune thought he had 4 secret half-siblings because they looked kind of like him and were emotionally compromised.
I'm still processing, Damian muttered, crossing his arms again.
Processing the betrayal?
Dick teased. No, processing the fact that my father somehow chose this group of people.
Tim grinned. He loves us.
I wouldn't go that far. Damian paused. But I suppose you are tolerable.
Tim whispered dramatically. That's the closest he's ever gotten to saying, I love you.
Keep talking and I'll personally show you how much I don't.
Damian reached toward him again, and Tim squeaked, ducking behind Dick as the chase started up once more. Damian lunged at Tim with a growl, hands outstretched like a hawk going for its prey.
Give me the phone, Drake, he barked.
Nope. Tim dodged left, nearly colliding with a box of books. He twisted around it with practiced ease, still clutching his phone like it was the last life-saving relic on Earth. This is archival content. You think we're letting this go in less than 20 years? Think again.
You'll be lucky to survive 20 seconds,
Damian snapped, swiping again as Tim ducked behind a chair. Don't break the couch, Dick called, though he made no move to stop them. The room echoed with scuffling, shouting, and Tim's near-hysterical laughter. As they wrestled, Dick leaned on the wall and sighed to himself. Yeah, maybe Bruce should have just sat Damian down with a nice labeled chart. Photos, timelines, DNA tests, literally anything. He shook his head slightly, half smiling as Damian somehow managed to pin Tim by trapping him under a throw blanket, like some sort of vengeance burrito. Next family meeting, we're doing a presentation with slides. And that is the end of Miscommunication is the Key. I really enjoyed reading this fic. It's so funny. It really is. I just love Damian in this thing. There was something else I wanted to say, but I forgot it. So you're not going to get it. Oh, right. Ignore my bad British accent for one of the Gotham ladies. Let's just pretend that that lady is just like so much of a posh asshole that she's like, yeah, I'm gonna do a British accent, and she's bad at it. Let's just pretend that. Anyways, thank you ALLLsudMhb for letting me read your fic. And all those of you who listened, thank you for listening, and bye!